Hi, 6th grade. This is Mrs. Daywald. We're going to be doing some PSSA review problems. This is almost always a PSSA problem without a calculator. There are usually 4 or 5 problems where you have to solve the problem without using a calculator on the PSSAs, and it's typically the first day of testing. So the first problem we're going to do is 2 2/3 divided by 1 1/9. As you know, dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second number, then multiply. Once again, dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second number, then multiply. So I need to first change both of these mixed numbers, or sometimes called mixed fractions, to all fractions. That would be, now it's got to be an improper fraction. Press pause and go ahead and do it on your own, and then you're going to check to make sure that you did it correctly. Great job. Hopefully you did it correctly. I will do it with you and you're going to check your work while I do it. I always like to make that little arrow, and I know that the bottom I have to multiply and up top I have to add. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then add 2, which should be 8, and the denominator stays the same. Denominator stays the same. It's still a division problem, so I'm going to bring down my division sign, and then 1 1/9. You're going to multiply 9 times 1, which is 9, and add another 1, which is 10. And the denominator stays the same. The next step is flip the dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second number, then multiply. So the second number needs to get flipped. That's the reciprocal. And I always say reciprocal, refliprocal. So I'm going to change this to 9/10. And when I do that, it makes it multiplication. We've done many examples of why that works in class. In order to make this easier, I could multiply across. When I multiply across, you know that it's numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Sometimes you get confused and you want to cross multiply. Nope, you only cross multiply if this were an equal sign, then it's a proportion. We cross multiply proportions. It's a multiplication problem, so we're going to multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. And I'm going to show you how you would do that. You could, I like to work down in the problem and put it underneath, but we're actually going to work over to the side first. And I would get 72 on top, because 8 times 9 is 72, and 3 times 10 is 30. And that's my final answer, except it's not simplified. So then I would have to find a common factor. We simplify fractions by finding a common factor. I could do it that way, but it's a little trickier if I don't have a calculator. I could also cross simplify before I multiply. So I'm going to first do it this way, and I'm going to find a common factor. Well, I know that they both have a common factor of 2, so I'm going to divide both of them by 2. I do know that 30 divided by 2 is 15, but I don't know what 72 divided by 2 is, so that's why it gets a little tricky. And that's where you'd actually have to do 72 over on the side divided by 2. And that takes longer. The answer is 36 if you did it that way. But now there's still another factor. They're both still divisible by something else. And I always say when you're not sure, check 3, because 3 might work. And in this case, 3 will work. I can divide them both by 3, and I would get an answer of 5 on the bottom, and I would get an answer of 12 on the top. And now that is my answer. And if it's PSSAs, you'd have to look at all your choices and find out, is it going to be an improper fraction, or do I have to change that to a mixed number? And if I'd have to change it to a mixed number, then I would have to, top number goes on the inside, 12 divided by 5, and 5 goes into 12. I know it goes in, 2 times 5 is 10. I have a remainder of 2. The remainder would go on top, and the denominator would stay the same, or the divisor stays the same. So it would be 2 2/5. This problem would be a whole lot easier. Here's option 1. You would get the correct answer. But option 2 is a little simpler. It's cross-simplify before I multiply. And whenever I simplify fractions, I find a common factor. So I know I have a 3 and I have a 9. And there is a common factor for 3 and 9. They're both divisible by 3, which means divisible by means dividable by. So I could divide 3 by 3 and get 1. And I could make that 1 a little bit nicer. 3 by 3 and get 1, and divide 9 by 3, and it would be 3. And then I could find a common factor for 10 and 8. Cross-simplify before I multiply. Simplify fractions, find a common factor. So what number is divisible by or dividable by? Both 10 and 8. And they're both even, so I know they're divisible by or divisible by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Much easier way of doing it because now my simplifying will be easier. 4 times 3 would be 12. I'm going to work down on this problem. And 1 times 5 is 5. And look at that. Once again, I got the same answer here as I got here. So I do recommend cross-simplify before you multiply. Remember, then you'll have to check your answers. If this could be your correct answer, or your choices might be a mixed number, and then it would be 2 and 2/5. If you have a calculator, you do have a button for that. You have to press the second button and then the ABC button, and that would change it from a mixed number to an improper fraction, or back and forth from one to the other. Great job, and hopefully that reviewed division of mixed numbers for you, or division of fractions. Remember, dividing fractions is easy as pie. Flip the second number, then multiply. But you have to have all fractions first, no whole numbers. And then simplify before you multiply can be your friend because it does make the problem easier. Good job, and good luck on those PSSA tests.